I agree. All of them are fine. Okay, so the thing is, at the end of it, in a graph making exercise, what matters is how best you want to make your message come through, right? And yeah, so that will finally depend on, of course, the main message in the graph is simple. Across years, number of snares kind of get better, right? So that's not, I mean, finding snares gets better, the encounter rate of snares gets better. And it seems to have something to do with effort, but it depends on how best you want to deal with it. Because again, encounter rate, as Shruti said, is already accounting for the effort that has been put in. Okay, so we do have an idea of that already incorporated in this. Okay. Now, what are the other things about this graph that you'd like to change, if there's anything that you want to change? To make it look, do you think this is a good graph, first of all? I'd say yes. It conveys a good message. But anyone has any objections to this graph?
Grid lines?
Yes, 1 to 10.
Grid lines? Okay, we can take off grid lines, I agree. Anything else?
The decimal points on the y-axis.
Okay. Decimal points don't make sense after the second one, the first decimal point, right? So you don't have to display them. Just cut it down to
One decimal
one decimal point. 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. Right? Anything else?
Yes, we can write from 0 to 10.
In fact, 2000, yeah, you can change the way this is also written. Yeah, you could, yeah. Anything else? Anything about the symbols?
You should add.
The line is required. Yeah, the emphasis on I said, don't you emphasizing on very like.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the over here effort stands out a lot
More than
other
other things. Yeah. So that's right. So right now effort is standing right out on your face. Although effort is not your main story. Your main story is the increase in tiger and ungulate. And when you write a legend for this, what do you say? Will you say that tiger snares are actually increasing? I haven't given you error bars on this, but I'm just asking you. Does it look like tiger snares are increasing? No? Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Just think of it. It's basically gone from 0.5 to 1.
Ungulate snares are increasing much more.
Ungulate
Size is.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you can, I mean, it depends. When you write your legend also, you can say that for this particular area, yeah, maybe you can say the relationship between, or rather, the number of snares detected across years in a certain area of ungulate snares and tiger snares. Okay? And then maybe in your legend itself, you can say that ungulate snares shows an increase of something. And instead of having this line graph, you could actually just have them as points. Okay? Because frankly, the line doesn't make any sense in this graph. Always remember that when you put a line graph, okay, that means this axis is a continuous axis. But in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, they're all years. Okay? And we're clubbing data for a year. We're making it a category. It doesn't matter if this was in January or February. Right? It becomes a year. So actually these are just points. They're not lines. So be very careful when you're making these graphs also to not connect something that doesn't need connection. Okay? And if it probably needs some connection, maybe use a dashed line. Because then the dashed line conveys the meaning that they're not actually, it's not the same way it's going, but it's approximately like this. So that's what, that's what it means. You get it? So there's a difference in meaning that is associated with the two of them. Is that okay? So would you want to also change the symbols? I'll ask Pradesh. Would you want to change the symbols?
Yeah, it's too big all the.
It's too big. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's also very important. Standardization of sizes. Okay. Make sure that almost all your text is of the same size. Either 12-point Calibri or Arial or something like that. And whenever you make a graph, use Arial. Yeah, Arial. When you're making tables, use Times New Romans. But otherwise, always use an Arial. And anything else? One more thing about this method. I have a small objection, or not objection, I have a small change that I would make to this.
For
Anyone?
legend, that effort in kilometer, and that is actually encounter rate of snares. That is not number of snares.
That's true. That is right. You can say call it encounter rate of snares. Yeah. Okay. Anything
Legend
else?
should be somewhere else, right?
Legend, you can bring it somewhere else. Maybe make a box. Okay. one more thing, just one more thing I have in my mind. So instead of using three different symbols, a square, a triangle, and a whatever diamondish kind of thing, I would instead use two colors and maybe use dots, a black dot and a white dot, right? And by actually just using two colors and a single symbol, your job is done. You don't have to complicate your graph legend also. Because every time you think about a graph also, just think about it in terms of reproduction. When someone prints it out, if the printer is not, just think of it like that, okay? If the printer is not good DPI quality, then a square might end up looking like a circle, or a circle might end up looking like something else. So think of those things also, and the size of your thing, and make it just a single circle, open circle, or a closed circle. And then your job is actually done. Is that alright? Okay, now we look at another one. Okay. So what does anyone have to say about this? Does this look publication quality? We'll ask them. No? Doesn't look publication quality? I think it's pretty nice. Anyone?
I see only, I have just two minor points. One is that it's a detection probability, no? So it anyways caps at 1. So you don't need to put 1.2.
Detection probability will not go beyond 1.
Yeah.
So your scale can stop there. Yeah? Is that alright?
No, but I think it's coming because of the error.
It comes because of the error. But still you can cap it at that because your error should also be within that only.
Yeah, and the second thing is nothing is mentioned whether what these bars mean.
No, it's there. Have it on
No, the error bars.
Oh, the errors. Yeah, you don't say that in your
Yeah.
thing. Yeah?
Whether it's
So
standard
your-
error, standard deviation.
Yeah. So you can say detection probability of tiger signs in two habitats across different stadiums. Full stop. Error bars indicate one standard error. Fine. So again, that's very important to explain everything in your graph. And in this particular case, I mean, that's fine. You've called it substratum and then had habitat block 1 and 2. So when you say different substratum, your job is done. But you could also maybe slightly change it. Maybe not even have the word substratum and just say in two habitat blocks in across roads, trains and crowds. That's also a potential. Anyone else? Any other comment on this? Is it a good graph, bad graph? Someone? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a decent graph. Yeah? Only one other change I would make, as I just told you, try and keep them all in calibrate or area.
Abhishek, what would be detection probability, bracket, standard error? Is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
you can say that
Is
here
it
also.
there also, no?
You can say that here also.
Yeah.
If you are putting it down, by itself there.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is it itself?
Exactly. Just say standard error. Yeah? So is that fine? Shall we go on to the next one? Another one? So please remember there's nothing wrong or right, okay, in what is. Okay. Who has comments on this? Decent? Anything else? Here again, maybe the same thing. Maybe make that just 1 because you know that detection probability doesn't go beyond 1. It's a probability value that goes from 0 to 1. So you stop that there, right? Habitat 1 and 2 is decent, no problems. Detection probability is fine. Maybe just like what you said, you can add the standard error here also. Say in brackets P with standard error, right? And then I think this kind of takes care. Yeah. Again, it just says across substrates, and you say the 3 substrates. You can either change it to rows, nodes, and trains, or maybe keep it as substrates. Is that alright? Yeah. So is anyone finding any general patterns in all of these graph making exercises? How many mistakes we make normally? Okay, here's another one. In many ways it doesn't look different from what Raglesh did. But what are the comments here? See, this is a decent thing to keep it as dark and open. Okay? Maybe what could have been done is just kept the same symbol itself. Keep black circles and open circles. And then have them show various things. And frankly, even without the line, I think we would have looked at it and found the line, right? So that's also perfectly all right. And same thing here, right? And encounter rates, yeah. Encounter rate is given here. Of course, I think I didn't say it clearly, but these encounter rates are per 5 kilometers. So maybe that also can be written in the axis itself. Encounter rate in brackets, snares per 5 kilometers, and make that a part of your figure. Anything else? I think that's fine.
And one more small thing is that most of the journals, some things are very specific about where these ticks need to be,
Ticks
whether they
inside
need to
or
point
outside.
inside or outside. And never use grid lines for publication quality figure.
Abhi, there's one thing that
Yes.
a general thing I need to clarify in terms of figures and tables. Do you have to specify the study species and the study duration for every figure and table?
Usually, yes. You say that, for example, for this one, let's take this. Let's say that you want to say that across years, encounter rate of snares for tigers and thing. So your legend will say whatever encounter rate of snares for tigers, late for tigers and ungulates
In this
in some habitat name, or let's say in Cobbett National Park, from 2000 to 2010. That does a great job. So usually you're supposed to give that also, but some journals take it, some journals don't take it. So just look at whichever journal you're submitting to see what the predominant way they've been writing it. If they write it, then continue writing. If they don't write it, most often the emphasis is there for tables rather than figures. So you can check that out. And also, some legends require you to explain everything. So, for example, in this particular case, I think I'll show it with another one. I'll show yours. So maybe what you can say is that ungulate snares in bracket open circles or something, closed circles or closed triangles.
Listen, Ravi, that comes up if you don't provide it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So you can do it like that also. You can say that ungulate snares, closed circles, you don't have this at all on your graph. And tiger snares, open circles. And then rest of your
that
legend.
you might want to do if there is too much already on the graph.
Graph.
There is no space.
If it's
to
a
put
simple
it.
graph like this, you can afford to keep your legend. But if not, then you can do that. Yeah? Anyone else with anything else? So shall I just stop with the graph making exercise here? I think we've all figured out how to deal with graphs. Okay? So what I just wanted to show you was how I had made this graph.
Yeah.
So this is how I made my graph, which thing. So detection probability P. I said probability of detecting tiger signs in THP 1. In my case, I had put it as tiger habitat block 1 and tiger habitat block 2. So I put my habitats as my main story because in my entire paper I was talking about differences between two habitat blocks. So I purposely kept tiger habitat block 1 as one separate thing to show that detection probabilities overall itself is much lower than that. You can do it the way you guys also did it, nothing wrong about it, but I'm just saying.
Can you cut the
And-
axis?
And I cut my axis to 1.
Below, because
I didn't put a axis line over here because frankly speaking, they are just two sets of categories. Okay? So that also makes, it's an important thing. If the axis line doesn't make sense, don't have it because it's not a continuous line. Your x-axis is not a continuous line. They are two sets, two categories. Okay? THP 2, again, what I've done is trails, roads and stream beds are purposely, I've coded them differently. And if you look at this, I have written probability of detecting tiger signs in THP 1 and 2 as a function of substrate type. Full stop. Error bars represent one standard error. Right? So, I think this was a good thing.
So the shortcut is okay with that PhD now.
Yeah. As long as you have explained it somewhere, in my entire story in my paper is about THP 1, THP 2. So yeah, in many ways it didn't matter if I expanded it here or
So
not.
at the start of the paper,
exactly, then you're done. Yeah. But very often people still feel that you should try and explain it the best. But some of them, which are the most obvious, the main central theme of the paper, you can afford to deal with it. For example, if you're talking about control versus experiment, and let's say you call them A and B, then you can just call it A and B throughout. So it's going to make
The lower error bars are not visible. That's
Sorry?
lower error bars.
Yeah. That's depends again on your style, if you want to put it. So in my opinion, what I wanted to do was only show the top caps. So I just put it one direction. So if you want to put it two sides, you can afford to put it two sides. I mean, it depends again on how you deal with it.
And it will become more important if they are different.
If they are different.
Yeah.
There is asymmetry.
In this particular case, I had no major differences. Yeah. Yeah? Okay. So just before we go into the last section of this, I just wanted to say that when we write papers, one of the biggest problems we often have is writing good English. Yeah, we're all good, we're all decent. In fact, I think we are better off than most other countries where English is a bigger problem. But in many ways, we still make a lot of mistakes. We use a lot of redundant words. We use a lot of phrases that are not required. And every journal, many of the journals have a list of phrases that they don't want to see very often. Okay, so it's very easy. You just go to any of them, you'll find it. But this is a site that I figured out was pretty interesting, and I use it once in a while. It's called, I sent this over yesterday. It's called the Online Paper Grader. This doesn't do anything in terms of the content of your paper. Okay, it cannot analyze what you've written. What it analyzes is the words that you've used, and are they fine? Are you using enough number of conjunctions? Are they good? Or are you using the same thing repeatedly many times? So if you have something to write, and you can paste it in over here, you put your title, you put your main text over here, then you can even put in the works cited, basically a reference section, and you can then choose if this is a doctorate PhD kind of paper, is this a research paper, and of course you can include, this is currently disabled, but this is even a plagiarism checking thing. So you can click this, say that I have thing, and then get a report. Okay? So it will take some time, but it will analyze your write-up, and it will just primarily what it does is not very different from what Word does actually. Word gives you a green line for wherever there's a grammatical error, red line for spelling error. It does something similar. But the additional thing is that it computes a few scores on how many times you use the word however. How many times do people use however?
It will tell you phrases, like as people we get habituated to using some terms, it comes again and again as speech in our writing. Like he did it and he found that he uses comprised of way too often. So it will flag it for you. So you get
Change it. Then you can make the change. That okay, fine. Maybe I use however too many times. I use consequently. I use some other word. Nevertheless. Things like that. So that is basically, this just helps you to improve your language. But again, please, this is nothing to do with what you've written or what all is there in the contents of your manuscript. It only looks at what your language is like. Yeah? Okay. So now, do we all agree we have a manuscript to submit? After all that you've done? Okay. So, when you're about to submit a manuscript, what happens is you have a manuscript file in your hand, you've written something, it's all ready, then you've formatted it, it's all in place, then you've got figures and tables, then once you've got these two files, you're extremely excited to submit your manuscript. So you go to the journal webpage, you make a login page for yourself, you're very, very happy about, making all these things. Then you put in the names of all your authors, the email addresses, institutions, contributing information, title, abstract, keywords, all of it you pasted, you're really happy. And then you remember, oh shit, I had to write a cover letter. Okay? And then, last minute, you're like, your boss has told you, aaj submit kar do. Kisi bhi halat mein aaj submit kar do. So then you quickly write a cover letter, and it sounds something like that. It basically says, dear sir / madam, this work I'm submitting to this journal was done by so and so, the fieldwork was done so and so, the money for this work was by so and so, this manuscript has not been submitted elsewhere, we declare no conflict in interest. This is the standard sentences. Every journal itself will have this written. All you have to do is cut paste your name, cut paste your thing, write it there. And then after that, they always ask you to write a novelty statement. Why is your work important? Why should we accept it? So quickly you write up, this is very important because I've done the work and now you have to accept it. So that's what we usually write. But something like, following management interventions to minimize anthropogenic disturbances, tigers have recovered and this has not been found anywhere else, so you have to publish my work. Okay? But frankly, this is not the way to go. Don't ever write a cover letter like this. It never does good. Okay? What you really have to do is write a cover letter, something like this. It's about, this is also not probably the best way to do it, but this is a better way to deal with it. So when you write a cover letter, have a proper one-page format dealing with all those issues that you talked about in your working abstract. Something like that. Okay? So the first section will be the standard paragraph. Okay? The standard paragraph is, this manuscript I'm sending to your journal. It's been done by so and so, so and so. The money was got from here. There is no conflict in interest. Everything is perfect in what we are doing here. The second section is, why should this paper come into your journal? Okay? So this is a very timely piece of work, and if I didn't do it this time, no one else would have figured this out. So you have to listen to me. And here is the place where you say that we feel that your journal is particularly important because these two papers that came out in your journal had a similar story, and it is within the scope of what you are publishing. Right? This is a very important thing for you to highlight. Very often what a journal will say is that this is not within our scope, so we can't take it. Or we get too many journal papers like this and we are not going to take it. So you have to clearly say that this has been published in your journal and we don't think that it's very different from what is come. Next. But also what you have to highlight is how different your work is from everything else that's been published. And what are you value adding to the work that is already available. Okay? Here you can take enough time to explain whatever you want. So in my case, I said that this is a new approach. We are using it for the first time in a small, smaller area. And despite the smaller area and the fact that everything is fine with this place, we show that connectivity has a serious problem. And connectivity, if you all of us know, is a huge central theme in conservation biology. So if you are able to pitch it, saying that connectivity is affecting tiger populations at a landscape level, then I think you've made quite a good pitch. Okay? And then you say all of this, and then after that you also bring in enough number of papers and criticize, not to the full extent, not like a manuscript, but say how different one particular thing is different from the other. For example, in my case, all the 3 papers that have done occupancy for tigers use remote sense variables for covariance. So my main pitch was that I have used ground collected data, right? So you make that pitch and then you put it up. And then of course then you close that thing saying that this is very important for conservation and so this is a very special case. And then after that, don't ever say something like that. Please consider our paper in your journal for review. No, okay? There is no consideration. You are very emphatic. You want to send it there, you have to be very strong with your push. You can't say that if you have the time, please look through it. No, not going to work. Yeah? So once you've done all of that, then you submit your paper. Look at the date, that's 13th. Okay? Then you make your submission, and then 4 days later, you get rejected. Okay? So now your time is over, you finished 4 days. Now you quickly reformat it, and then you send it to another journal. So I have sent it from Journal of Zoology to Animal Conservation. So that again went on 19th, and by 26th, that was gone again. And of course, sometimes you're even more luckier. You don't have to wait for so long also. You submit it at 1 o'clock, and by 4 o'clock you can okay. So all kinds of things can happen. You just have to be lucky with the journal. If you're very lucky, they'll get back to you in 3 hours. But if you're not very lucky, you'll have to wait for a few days. And once in a while, of course, you submit a manuscript and then you get a revise and then you get really happy. Okay? So you're like, yes, finally I get a chance to do something to my manuscript other than reformatting it and sending it to another journal. But when you open the mail, you notice that it's like pages and pages of revisions, okay, and you don't know what to do with it. But the deal again here is once you've looked at the revision comments, how you incorporate those revisions into your manuscript and make it fine is a very important step. Because very often we make big mistakes with that. And I'll show you one of the first mistakes that I made. So I got this review comment, which was actually, I didn't paste the review comments on it because it was 12 pages. So I got 12 pages of review comments, okay, and I read it and I figured out that the central theme was 7 main points, okay. So what I did was I thought, hey, I'll be smart, I'll summarize all my responses into the 7 main points. And I just said, I have now answered the 7 main points and these are my 7 main points, thank you. That's it. But this is not the way to do it, okay. Don't ever do something like this. Just use the mouse and get the right. A better way to deal with it is to actually be very, very clear about what your response is going to do. Because your response letter is as crucial as your manuscript itself. Okay? Every comment that you get, you have to answer it one after the other and point by point. Okay? So very often what happens is there is a handling editor, the editor who gets your paper and then sends it out to reviewers for reviewing. Okay? So what happens is the handling editor is the person who collates all the review comments and sends it to you in a nicely covered letter. So what you have to first do is write a letter to the handling editor telling him what are the major changes you brought into your paper. So then say that firstly we'd like to thank you and the 2 referees, and following are the main significant changes to the manuscript. So the significant changes are 1 and then 1, 2. Okay, you explain that. Then all these are the significant changes. Then go down. Then you bring in the minor suggestions that he made. Okay. For example, in this particular review, he had some suggestions himself. He said that although you've done all of this, you haven't taken into consideration preferred prey. I had only taken Cheetal Sambar, but he said, Sambar is more preferred than Cheetal. So if you take only Sambar, it might be better. So what I did is I actually reran my analysis and showed that preferred prey didn't actually matter that much. Okay? So this is also fine. If you're very clear. In fact, in my analysis, I knew from the beginning that it didn't make a difference. That's why I didn't put it also. I didn't make that hypothesis. But what you can do later is say that, for the review comment, you say that yes, this is how it actually fits in. Because it doesn't make a big story, I'm not going to incorporate your comment. Yeah? And then after that, you go down to all the and then you come down to review 1. And then again, just like what you did for the first guy, for the handling editor, you make it possible. Unfortunately, the colors are not showing up, but what I usually do is I use various colors. So it's a very nice artistic exercise. So you write the whole thing in black, and then you say whatever is in blue, bold, italics are the changes that I made. Okay? Somewhere here there's a red, bold red. Okay? Basically all these bold red ones are the ones that I've deleted. So it's very clear when the moment they get to see the PDF that the red sections are the ones that I have deleted, the blue ones are the ones I've changed, and maybe there may be some green ones somewhere which say that I accept what you have asked me to do. Just go down. And sometimes it is also important to put additional data. Like in this case, I had to put this additional data to say that actually tigers have been declining in this landscape, and what I'm showing is just a fraction of this story. Go down. And in another case, I also drew some maps and explained the landscape to them so that it makes it very clear. So the thing is, just think of this as what happens in our ARS. Okay, ARS, we get questions, we are asked to answer them. What we do is we just say yes, no, and finish up something. But actually, what it really should be doing, what we should be doing even in our ARS is actually coming down to such specifics. And when Shankar sir sends us the list of things, you have to write a comment and give it back. I think some of us do it, right? Yeah, so we just say yes, we accept or whatever. But ideally, this is how it should be, right? You clearly say, do you agree with what has come to you or not come to you? Student.
And see, the thing is that even if they say no, that change A to and, you must acknowledge it. That you said this, I did this.